In the very north of the Scandinavian peninsula, in the northern Norway, there lies an archipelago, a series of islands who are a little bit off the beaten track, a little bit mysterious, but absolutely gorgeous and splendid. They boast beautiful snow-capped mountains rising steep up from beautiful turquoise waters of the sea, has beautiful white sandy beaches, amazing waterfalls, and over 1,000 years of history around the Vikings and the Norse. This is the Lofoten Islands, and we went on a family adventure. So come, join me on a journey as I show you the Lofoten Islands through our eyes. We flew into Lofoten from Oslo. There are a couple of small airports where you can get into. We flew into this airport called Narvik or Evenes, and we had booked a car, which we picked up right from the airport, and we had the car for the next 3 days to explore the Lofoten Islands. The main road which we'll drive on a lot is the E10. This is a European road. This is a 2-lane road, pretty well maintained, and this goes all the way to the south to this place called Å, which we're going to see later, and it continues past the airport and it continues up to Sweden. The road is absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, it's just white snow-capped mountains, waterfalls every few minutes, tunnels and bridges and big pastures, and you get to see some reindeers and ships and goats. And there are a lot of exotic birds up in those trees and those mountains. So make sure to keep your binoculars out. While driving on the E10, you are going to find a lot of small places to park your car and just stop there. In some cases, they're designed as trailheads where you park your car and you go on those different trails. But in most cases, that's where you just park your car and you take photos, or you go on small excursions and get up close and personal with nature. They are not only super easy to find, and we many times found them after we have crossed that spot. So if you are driving on this E10, be always on the lookout for those spots. And some of those spots give you absolutely breathtaking photo opportunities, and few other spots are great for doing picnics or small hikes and excursions. You're going to encounter a lot of tunnels on this road. Some of the tunnels are pretty long. Like the shrouded tunnel we went in, it was like 6 kilometers long, and we were there for 5 minutes. And we were not fully prepared for that experience. So be on the lookout for the tunnels. They will find you. Some of them are undersea tunnels. So that, and at the end of the tunnels, the scenery sometimes are absolutely breathtaking. One of the most special highlights of our trip was this accommodations where we stayed at, which are called rorbu. They are like charming wooden cabins perched on stilts. Stilts are like these wooden legs. In many cases, they extrude right on the water. And these are a defining feature of northern Norwegian coastline, particularly in this Lofoten Islands and this other part nearby called Vesterålen. So these sort of started emerging in this part of the world around 100, 200 years back, especially for the cod fishermen, where they would make this their temporary abode during the cod fisheries time. They would come here, these houses would extrude right on the water, so the boats could come right under those houses, so they can load, unload from those boats right into the houses, and they would stay in these houses. Today, many of these houses have been converted into hotels. This particular hotel where we stayed at, this is actually a very old rorbu, almost 150 years old, which they have since then renovated. and is a very nice property today with absolutely outstanding views. But even outside of where we stayed, we could see this almost everywhere. So this is, we are driving through this village called Awe at the very southern end of the island, and you can see these red rorbu houses everywhere. One thing you will notice is most of these houses are colored red, and that is a very peasanty, a very cheap color, because the pigment would come from the blood of the animals and the fish, and they would mix it with cod oil, which was plenty, and they would create these red colored houses. You would also see some of the yellow houses. That's like the second most common thing, and followed by the white, which really showed the wealth. And as you can see, some of these roadways provide an absolutely amazing view of the Lofoten Islands. You will see this lot more as you go further south of the Lofoten Islands compared to the more northern areas where regular hotels are more traditional. If possible, if you are visiting, this is where definitely you should try to stay. Now, let's talk about the fish, because they are the most important commodity out of this area for over 1,000 years. And the main fish we are talking about is the cod. In the spawning season, they are caught in abundance, and they are known as prey over here. After they are gutted, fishermen would hang them on these A-frames, which are known as jail. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. In many other parts of the world, in many other cultures and societies, drying fish is a pretty common practice. But what is different over here, because we are so far up in the north, it is so cold and windy, that drying here takes a really long time. It can take up to months, in some cases up to 3+ months. In every other culture in the world, in every other part of the world, it takes a lot lesser, maybe like even a few days. So given this very long drying process, and this is dried without any salt, without adding anything, so this is just cold air drying this cod, this makes a very unique taste. And the smell, umama, if you are there, my kids ran to the car. They did not like hanging out here, and the smell will definitely make you not eat for the next many hours. But one thing you would notice that the heads are cooked or dried separately than the bodies. This made me curious, like, why is that? And I got to know that the heads are exported as delicacies in Africa, especially in Nigeria, where it is known as okporoko, because the stockfish, so this whole dried fish is called stockfish. Once this is put into hot boiling water or oil, it makes that noise, okporoko. And they make local delicacies like egusi, afang, and so on and so forth there. We tried this fish in a local supermarket. This was very dry, almost like chips without any taste. It absolutely had no taste and no smell once it is fully dried. But it made us appreciate all the toughness and the hardness of the Norse and the Vikings, which I've heard through so many stories and movies. The next stop in our journey was the Lofoten Viking Museum. On this archipelago, there are quite a few different museums for fisheries and other things, but we decided to go here because this seemed to be the biggest and has the most details of the history and is one of the very interesting archaeological dig sites was actually found over here. This is situated in this town called Borg, which is kind of in the middle of the archipelago, so it is relatively easy to get to depending on where you are staying. The Viking Museum is kind of divided into a few parts. There is this few rooms inside of the museum. That's where we are here right now, which kind of shows a little bit of history of the Borg, how the archaeological dig happened back in the 1980s when a farmer found some broken pieces of glass and ceramics over here. That really led to archaeologists coming here from all over Scandinavia and doing the digging over many years to come. So over here, you actually get to learn about all of those. The museum has this short movies. You can also connect to their app. They have audiobooks using which you can learn about the stories of all the different exhibits and so on and so forth. In the next room, they have some of the chieftains from the back, almost 1,000 years back. These are the Viking chieftains. So you basically get to learn a little bit of their life and what sort of artifacts they used to use, how they used to hunt, what sort of clothes they used to do, how they used to make fire. So basically taking you back to life almost 1,000 years back in this part of the world, in Lofoten Islands. Next, we head outside, and the museum has massive outdoor grounds, and that's where you see the main attraction around which the whole museum was built. This is a chieftain's house. This is a Viking longhouse of more than 1,200 years old. This is what was discovered back in the 1980s. This is over 83 meters long and was built around the year 500 AD, well before the Viking Age, but then it was extended to the staggering 87-meter length back in the 700s AD. So this is at least 1400 years old in its current size. Once you go inside, you get to experience life as it was back in those days in these Lofoten Islands. You get to see their clothes, what sort of instruments they used to use, how they used to make fire. You get to interact with a lot of craftsmen who are not actually just enacting their different life, they're actually building all these cool artifacts. Like this person over here, he's actually making some pretty awesome shoes using very bare bone instruments which were available 12, 1300 years back and using leather from the animals. The inside is divided into a few different compartments. There's a living quarters, there's a feast hall, there's a barn. As expected, you get to see some of the drying cords over there. And there are a lot of audio clues, so you can go and learn about all these different quarters and what used to happen there. This place was surprisingly pretty family friendly as well. There were quite a lot of stations for young kids to go and play, to pick up these wooden swords. There's coloring stations and things like that. So my kids also had a blast, which was a plus. The excavation tells us that this was a pretty wealthy community, and most likely the wealth was gathered through trade. And the chieftain over here used to trade local things like cord, antlers of the reindeer, and things like that to down south and all over Europe. And they actually amassed a pretty huge amount of wealth over here, almost 12, 1300 years back. So you can actually see the evidence of that wealth sort of spread all across this house. One of the most fascinating rooms we found was this burial room. So this is where, if you are a king or a chieftain, this is where you are buried out on a boat in the waters. The Lofoten Island boasts some of the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. The beaches are absolutely white, sandy beaches, and the water is crystal clear, turquoise blue, surrounded by the snow capped mountains all around. You just cannot imagine any better setting for a beach than this. This particular one is called the Ramberg Beach. It's right on the side of the E10 highway. You just park your car, and there's a very nice walkway. You just get down there, as you can see, the whole beach we were just by ourselves. There are some houses right next to the beach, but we visited in the shoulder season, so I guess tourists were low. But I can't imagine this becoming too crowded even at the peak of the season. We spent a good 30 minutes here. The only drawback, as you can imagine, that it is cold and windy. So you have to be wearing layered clothes and jackets before you go into the beach. We then went to this other place where there are like three beaches next to each other. So this one is called the Vic Beach. This is a little bit off from E10, so you have to go on a smaller road and go to the back of the island to get here. But the story still remains the same. Absolutely beautiful sand with mountains all around. I think this one had even more gorgeous waters, at least to us. And my kids really liked this beach because there were like a couple of small rivers which were just going on the beach to the and falling into the sea. So they had a blast on this particular beach. There are a couple of other beaches nearby called the Utlev Beach and the Hawkland Beach, which are all sort of right next to each other. And there's a very nice hike where you can go from the Hawkland to the Utlev Beach. We did a little bit of that hike. It's over an hour and a half long hike, over 4 kilometers long. So with young kids, we could not do the whole thing, but we did a little bit. It is a very easy hike for anyone physically capable. There are quite a few other beaches on this archipelago. Like there's this beach called the Kavlika Beach, which I heard a lot, but that's a pretty steep hike. Like you have to hike for more than 4 hours to reach that beach, and then probably you have to stay overnight. You have to camp there, so it is not super easy to go to those remote beaches, especially with young kids. So we could not go there. As you drive down the E10 from north to south, there are just natural beauty everywhere, but there are also a lot of very Instagrammy, social media famous places like this Gimsottromen Bridge. We actually, in the earlier part of the video, we drove over this Gimsottromen Bridge. There is a spot where you kind of stand. There's a big parking lot right before the bridge, and you can appreciate the beauty of this natural location. Then we headed over to this Henningsberg Stadium. This is really, really, really famous on Instagram and other social media. This was a little bit of a bummer though, because we realized that the beauty and the spectacularness, is that even a word? A spectacularness, what we see, what we appreciate, we really cannot appreciate that from the ground. You actually have to climb up the small hills surrounding this stadium, or you have to have a drone. But nevertheless, this was pretty cool. We saw some kids playing there, and we spent half an hour or so having a little bit of picnic. We then headed down close to Awe on the very southern end of the island, and this is the Lofoten National Park. So this is where the Lofoten Wall is. This is the highest peak of those mountains anywhere in this Lofoten Islands. These are like sheer cliffs, fully rocky, snow cap goes straight up from the sea, and a really spectacular view. The concept of national parks seemed a little bit different over there. This was not really like a park with like its own entrance and so on and so forth, but it was spectacular nevertheless. So that's our 3 days in the Lofoten Islands. This is Has been an absolutely incredible 3 days. The weather was really nice, so we are really lucky. And hopefully through this video, I have been able to showcase the grandeur and the beauty of these Lofoten Islands in all its glory. If you ever plan a trip to Scandinavian islands, especially if you're a nature lover, if you like hiking, or if you have young kids, I would definitely recommend coming to Lofoten Islands. If you come in the winter, you get to see the northern lights. If you come during spring and summer like we did, you get to experience the outdoors a lot more. In every season, this must be beautiful. So pack your bags and the next Scandinavian vacation, put Lofoten Islands on your bucket list. Catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.